Hello everybody and welcome back. Once again, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Silmarillion Total War tournament. This is a flash tournament that went on over the course of 2 days, that being Friday and Saturday. And we're going to go through probably the entire thing depending on the amount of time that I have. But in the event that we don't get through it all today, then I will put part 2 up probably Monday morning. But yes, so without any further ado here, let's get into the first round. I should probably talk a little bit about the rules. So, standard rules apply. 14,000 gold budget per player. Matches are all 1v1. And all of the matches except for the finals are just a best of one series. It's a flash tournament. We just wanted to do it over the weekend. It wasn't anything big or formal. So things will progress reasonably quickly. With all that being said, let's take a look at some of the first round replays. There should be about 4 of them in total. I'm actually going to be in this game, so we're going to be playing on the Nargothrond map. My opponent is Fëanor. He's one of our GMs for the upcoming roleplay game that we're going to be releasing when the new public patch comes out, hopefully by the end of the summer. And that is going to be sort of a Risk-esque affair, but I will be playing against him today. Nargothrond is generally well suited for free-for-alls. That's kind of what I made it with in mind. But it is still a decent map for 1v1s. It's relatively flat. There's a decent amount of terrain. There's some hidden areas in here that you can use to be sneaky. And my army is going to consist of the forces of Doriath. Now, one of the things to note about this particular battle and about the build that we're playing on is that we've actually added in a ton of elephants since our last update. So you're going to see things like Sauron, the Balrogs are now elephants, Ents are now elephants, so the anti-elephant bonuses that have been so liberally applied since the beginning of Silmarillion Total War are now going to apply in a very real and important way against more than just the Urloki. So, Ents, Sauron, Balrogs, from now on, something you want to keep an eye on around anti-elephant units. But in any case, I'm playing as the Guarded Realm of Doriath. I've got a couple units of Wardens of the Girdle. These are, actually I have 3 of them in total. These are more of an infantry unit focused on getting into close quarters after they use their limited ammunition pool. They've also been backed up with some Spear Hosts of the Girdle. These are light spearmen who also have a missile value. And on my wings, I'm going to have 2 detachments of Spear Host of Girdle in addition to. I've also brought Marksmen of Region, 2 units of them. These guys have Silverthorn arrows, but I brought them for their high accuracy and strong missile damage. I've also got 2 companies of the Mounted Company of Region. I've got 2 units of Axemen of the Girdle as well. I've got some more Spear Hosts of the Girdle here. In addition to, I've got the Rangers of the Girdle. These are detachment archers, as Doriath does not generally focus on their range capacity, although you'd certainly be shocked to learn that given the composition I've brought today, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. But I've got 2 detachments of Rangers of the Girdle. They are shielded. They get the full shield value of, I believe, about 6. So they are extremely tanky. They are equipped with poison arrows, and their accuracy is decent. And now we get into the real meat and potatoes of my army. I've just got a lot of light infantry so far, but I've also got a core of the Axe Guard of Region, heavy axemen. And finally, to round it all off, I've brought some Doriath and Mablung, which is where my general's going to be hanging out today. And I've brought these guys largely to counter the Ents from Doriath. Or from Acedian. But my army is largely shielded, as you've probably noticed, and I've got a ton of missile units here. I'm not going to be able to catch the Green Elves, or at least it'll be extremely difficult for me to do so on a field battle like this. My opponent was able to pick the map, and this is a map that does play in to the Green Elf playstyle quite well. So I've brought tons of skirmish units, as many as I can get my hands on, so the Wardens of the Girdle here are mostly there to absorb missile fire, use up some of that deadly Acedian bow ammunition, and also be able to clap back just a little bit. So I'm able to keep the pressure on them from range. I've got lots of spearmen to help me counter the elephants. My Rangers of the Girdle as well are solid supporting units. My Marksmen of Region are going to be instrumental for dealing with units like, say, the Outriders of Dwylwyn. They are quite quick, and the high mass and high accuracy of the Marksmen of Region is going to help them deal with them from afar. I've got my Axe Guard here on my very, very back line, as I want to keep them out of combat for as long as possible. This is sort of the workhorse units that I'm going to be able to win the infantry fight off of. I got Spear Host back here as support. My Axemen are there as well. and my Mounted Company of Region are here largely to contest the cavalry fight. But an important thing to note is that they're actually pretty decent against elephants. Elephants have an AoE attack, and because you can see the very liberal spacing here of cavalry units, which is done intentionally, cavalry units can be extremely effective against them, in that they can, particularly melee cavalry units that have bonuses versus elephants, they're able to stick around in a fight much, much longer, and because of that spacing, they do mitigate the damage of elephant units somewhat, so it's an important thing to have. And then, of course, my Doriath and my Blung, all two-handed units in Silmarillion Total War that are dedicated to infantry, will get a +2 bonus against elephants. Ooh, they're going to be over here now. And with their armor piercing, they can be extremely potent counters to elephants. So Fëanor's going to want to keep them away from his elephants at all costs, and I'm going to want to get them stuck in with them if I am able to. Let's go ahead, fast forward here just a little bit, and we can take a look at the Acedian army composition. And while we're waiting, why don't I take a moment here and look at our chat. All right. So, let's take a moment here to pause. We're not going to be able to see everything right away, but I do remember his composition fairly well. He's got some Scouts of Gelion here. He's going to have 3 full units of them, and I want to get my Wardens of the Girdle into position as quickly as possible. So you can see that they're already beginning to take up their frontline positions, and we'll be able to put some pressure into the Scouts of Gelion. Now, the Scouts of Gelion are the line archer for Acedian. They by far have the most ammunition, and they can do the most damage over time. So they're going to be one of my big focuses. Another focus is, of course, going to be the Urfin and Tower. If I can whittle them down, then the infantry fight is going to go hugely in my favor, as his army is a good deal smaller than mine. He's also brought some Mythern and Tolgalen, 2 units of them. These are armor-piercing units, and that is armor-piercing is actually mitigated to a significant degree by the high amount of melee defense that I have brought as well. So we do have a decent army here to fight Acedian. We got some Elriders of Dweilwyn, more Urfin and Tower, and of course the Ents. You can probably see that they have gotten a significant deal larger, and that is reflected, or will be reflected better at least in subsequent patches, by their large kind of hitbox. Got some Scouts of Gelion over here as well. Got some Kinsmen of Denethor, and I think I saw a second company of the Kinsmen of Denethor hanging out over here. Now, it's worth noting these guys may get a new model in the near future. I do have to talk to Castellan about maybe using some of his creations, but the model for the Kinsmen of Denethor may get an update in the very near future, and that may even make it into the next patch. I believe he's also got, I think he might have some Javelins and other things like that around here. He's definitely got a unit of Rendirum who are hanging around somewhere, and those are the Deadly Ranger units, and they're going to be an important part of this. Just give me a moment here. And then we'll get into things, as I forgot to link my stream in a few different places in my eagerness to jump into this. There we go. I'll just be a quick moment here, my friends. There we go. I'm going to take a look at chat here for a moment. Acedian is probably the best faction to play in a siege. I don't know about that. We have some pretty good factions to play in a siege. But yeah, so I've moved up in force here. You can already see me beginning to poke away at the Mythern and Tolgalen, or the Urfin and Tower, rather, in this case. He's also going to have a couple units of the Sentries of Gelion. I kind of forgot about them, but hey, that's not too bad. Just a couple of hidden cavalry units that I forgot. And as they flee, I will turn my archers onto them and try and get some free kills as they begin to run away. But they are moving quite quickly, and they are quite spaced out. Oh, we're going to get a few of them, though. And this is pretty well exactly the game that I wanted to play. I wanted to perhaps surprise Acedian, as this is very much a kiting army. I wanted to be able to counteract that somehow with a lot of missile fire on my end. And so now that I've driven them off, and the scouts have gone back into hiding, I'm going to begin to focus my attention onto the Urfin and Tower and try and kill them off. Fëanor sees what I'm doing, so he's going to bring back his scouts of Gelion, but I've got plenty of archers around here, and I'm going to be able to continuously harass them. So I brought forth some of my Rangers of the Girdle in case those cavalrymen want to try anything funny and move through this gap here. I do have the necessary tools to lock them down. I got Spearhouse nearby. I actually got Detachment of Spearhouse nearby as well, and my Rangers of the Girdle. And that'll be enough to deal with those pesky mounted archers from a distance. Yeah, and the skirmish fight continues to go down, so we're going to slowly increase things here, and you'll just kind of watch the numbers drop. Trying to whittle down the Urfin and Tower. I've managed to kill off about a tenth of that unit so far, which is really important for us. And now I'm able to safely turn my attention onto the scouts of Gelion, and they're trying to get themselves back into hiding. But unfortunately, I've already trained my archer sights on them, so they are going to have to stand and fight. Otherwise, they'll just be getting shot and not be doing anything to support themselves. I'm going to have a quick relocation here with the rest of my army. I want to move things just a little bit farther closer, as some of my my wardens are actually getting a little bit low on ammunition. This one's already run out. So if I can position myself in such a way that I'm going to be able to quickly bum rush the Acedian elves, then while continuing to plink away at them from range, then I'm going to be just laughing. But Fëanor sees it. He's going to pull back. He's going to leave the Kinsmen of Denethor on the front lines. Not a bad idea. These guys are locked morale. Spread them out, and they can hold up your enemies for a very long period of time. I think some of these guys still have ammunition. A couple of them have run out. I did want to try and get close to them with some of my spear hosts if I was able to. I'm actually going to bring some of my rangers up here as well. Now, I don't think you can see them through the tree cover just yet. We got rangers, I got marksmen, I got all kinds of things moving forward, just trying to support my front line. Because as I mentioned, this is a kiting army, so the idea here is going to be to try and string me out and destroy my units piecemeal. Our second Scouts of Gelion Company has now revealed themselves. Some of them getting bowled over by those poor Ents, and they're going to begin to fire at my Wardens of the Girdle. And I think actually they're going after my my Mounted Company right now, which is okay. They've got really good armor, and they've got shields from the front, but there's no reason to let them kind of sit there and take attrition when I can't really make him pay for it in return. So I'll pull them back and move forward here. Some more of my Wardens of the Girdle. Look to maybe threaten the Scouts of Gelion here, just trying to test my opponent's micro a little bit. Moving forward with Spearhouse support as well, as I'm well aware that the Riders, or the Outriders rather, of Dwelwyn are on the field, and I want to be able to damage them as efficiently as I'm able to. Got some Spearhouse of the Girdle over here, kind of getting left behind, so lapse in my micro there as well. Now I've got my Rangers of the Girdle coming up here onto the hill. And so my opponent is going to kite backwards. Again, this is kind of how Acedian is expected to play, because in a straight fight, like 1-to-1, my elves will dumpster his. So he needs to be able to get the most out of his range units. So you can hardly blame him from trying to play this sort of game. Randir and Tol Galen have now moved forward and revealed their position. And so we are starting to kind of roll back his line, but he's just kind of retreating and retreating and retreating, and he's going to do that for a while. It's not going to be until he gets over into this area that we actually manage to finally pick a fight. So big line of these guys going forward. I would really like to get a piece of these Scouts of Gelion, but unfortunately, Fëanor is going to be able to have them escape. My Wardens of the Girdle here have taken a lot of damage. We will be able to get a Javelin volley off there onto some of these Scouts of Gelion, but I don't think it's actually going to kill any of them. It will just slow a few of them down. No, maybe we managed to get a couple. So briefly we managed to get ourselves into Javelin range. And now the rest of my army, it's a little bit slower than my light infantry, is trying to play catch up. And again, I'm trying to keep this particular section of the battlefield locked down as best as I'm able to. But yeah, it's just going to be a lot of skirmishing and a lot of cat and mouse stuff. So I think now's a decent time to check the chat. What's the highest armor value in the game? 15 currently. We have updated things, so since the Sons of Fëanor armor upgrade updates, we've actually increased the overall highest value. Urfin and Tower here. shooting at, not too sure what. Shooting into the front of my spear host to the girdle, apparently. Not exactly an efficient use of their ammunition. But again, I haven't given him many targets, and that is very much by design. So I've moved my mounted company of Region here. He's going to move in to try and get some shots off of them across the long of their axis there, but laying down some enfilading fire. Now would be a decent time for me to move forward with my my rangers. So I want to try and shoot at these guys and keep them busy. So I will both turn them to face these guys so that they're getting their shield bonus, but a lot of these shots are actually trying to arc over the tower as well, so they're not super effective. So it's a decent way. This here is a decent way to try and waste some of his ammunition. I managed to throw some of my my troops in here. I managed to catch him. I know the rest of my forces are a little bit behind, so I do have some more Wardens of the Girdle here backed up with some Spear Host. And we're going to be picking away at more of his Fëanor tower, keeping them out of the fight and keeping the attrition on them high. Wardens of the Girdle are doing their best here. They've managed to take down some of these units. Outriders of Wheelwind have moved forward, and we're actually putting a little bit of ranged firepower into them from the front. Got my Doriath and my Blung moving in, as I wanted to draw out his Ents and try and get into a fight with them if at all possible. The Randirim have taken about a tenth of their infantry, or a tenth of their strength rather, in damage. And they're actually getting picked on by some of my archers as well. And so he's going to be forced to flee here. My Wardens of the Girdle took some pretty heavy losses. And it didn't really turn out super well for us. We did manage to catch some units, and we have kind of like spread him out a little bit. So Fëanor's lost his micro here on the Fëanor tower, so we are able to kind of deal with them. So what I probably should have done is maybe brought some of my other units over here and just tried to isolate these guys and deal with them. But unfortunately, he's going to have the opportunity now to draw them back. But still, nonetheless, we have managed to plink away at them, and we've killed probably about 10 or so. Maybe a little bit more than that out of each of these Outriders of Dweilwind. So it's sort of a slow grind right now. We're a little bit behind, but that will certainly begin to change once the Elves of Acedian begin to get pushed back and forced into melee. So we've got lots of missiles over here. My Spear Hosts are trying to reload. We're taking a big bite out of the Scouts and all these other units here. And my Mounted Company have taken some pretty heavy losses in addition to. It's certainly a very frustrating army comp to play against, but at the same time it does have some very clear weaknesses, one of those big ones being their number. So I lost my micro here on my Mounted Company, and unfortunately they got their backs turned, and now they're going to get shot at, and they'll eventually get engaged in close quarters with the spears here, and that's probably going to be the end of them. My troops here having some trouble firing, which is really unfortunate. But we are slowly but surely kind of grinding them down and bringing it back just a little bit. So they are kind of ahead of us, but that's mostly due to the kiting tactics so far. So once things get embroiled in close quarters, we certainly do have the advantage there as Doriath by a fairly significant margin. So some of my axemen here just got swallowed up. That's unfortunate for them. The Outriders here were looking like maybe they wanted to pick a fight, but unfortunately for them, they were driven back by the presence of my Spear Host of the Girdle. But things are pretty chaotic right now. Lots of moving pieces. Some of my army still trying to play catch up, so not really the best showing for me so far. But we are still in a decent spot. Still got my Rangers back here. I just need to move everything forward and then begin to kind of hem him in once again. You can see a fair amount of like dead Scouts of Gelion, and a fair amount of like dead cavalry and things like that. So it's not going horrible for us. We've managed to actually get it up to about 25% so far. Axemen of the Girdle, we're trying to get a decent shot off there on the Mythrin and Tolgolen. But Fëanor is going to see an opportunity here for his Ents to move in. And I'm going to see an opportunity to get the hell out of there. And we're both going to move in response to that. I have my Spear Host coming forward. They do have some bonuses, some fairly hefty bonuses against elephants. So it's not something that he wants to kind of sit around and take fire from. So my marksman here, laying down the pain, firing into this big old blob here that Fëanor has created for himself. And we're actually going to manage to pull ahead there by 1% for the first time this game. So that's pretty good for us. Unfortunately, I didn't see the Rangers in this big old blob. So what I should have done is focused everything I had right now on these Rangers while they were still out in the open. That's probably a big mistake on my part. But nonetheless, I've managed to get through this with my core units intact for the most part. So my axemen have taken some damage, but nothing terribly significant. It's mostly my light infantry who have borne the brunt of this fight so far, which is kind of what is needed. Sons of Hurin will probably defeat the Doriath and Mablung. You might be surprised by that. The Sons of Hurin are really good, and they hit really, really hard. But they're a glass cannon, whereas the Doriath and Mablung balance their offensive and defensive stats just a little bit better. And they've got, I think, like 19 or so melee defense to the Sons of Hurin, who I think have like... I think they have like something quite low, actually. I think it might be as low as 12. I'm beginning to open fire here, but we're going to counter with a volley of javelins. It's going to knock some of those Scouts of Gillian off their feet. Kill, a fair few of them. Another big old javelin volley there. And kill off more and more of those Scouts of Gillian. Riders of Dwelwyn now taking a strong position out here. But these Urfin and Tower, this is basically all of his killing power for his infantry, outside of maybe the Mythern to a lesser extent. And now we're starting to try and poke at them just a little bit more. So I've got my Rangers now focusing down these guys. So we've lost a lot of light infantry, but when it comes to like the infantry killing power, we are still very much ascendant in that regard. So the more the skirmishing goes on, the more the balance bar begins to favor Acedian, as you would expect. But again, this is mostly my light infantry. He's starting to focus in a little bit on like my Axe Guard and stuff, so they are starting to take some losses now, and that's really my fault for bringing them this far forward. I should have my Wardens of the Girdle and my Axemen of the Girdle and stuff like that in front and center. Some sentries here, and they're going to try and take up a strong position. Probably try and get around my wings here, if they had all they can, and lay some fire down into my Spear Host units from the front. So now is probably the moment when I think I want to try and surge forward. We're going to play a little bit of cat and mouse here with his Outriders of Dwelwyn, as Fëanor is trying to get in behind my forces, but I'm not just going to let him do that. Of course not. I've got my Rangers at the Girdle here. I've got my Marksmen nearby as well. I think we're still pew-pewing away at some of these Scouts of Gillian, but by far a better target and use of our ammunition would certainly be the Urfin and Tower. Scouts and sentries of Gillian here have taken quite a beating, but there's still quite a lot of them. So still a threat. But our numbers, as you can see, are still good. I don't think we've lost more than one unit at this point. Oh, what are we doing here? I wonder who they're going after. Well, they seem to be having some difficulties with their firing arc here, but I think that they're definitely going after the Urfin and Tower. We are going to manage to catch quite a number of them as they retreat. And again, every single one of these guys that die is a loss seriously felt by Acedian, as I can't overstate it enough. This is where so much of their killing power comes from. Axemen of the Girdle moving up here. I think the intention is to try and pick a fight if we can. Yep, so we're going to get a piece there of those cavalrymen, take down some more of them. Testing Finrod's resolve, and it seems like he doesn't really want to go for a straight fight just yet. We are going to get some throwing axes in there as well. Take some more bites out of these units, and now the Ents are going to be forced to come forward. And I will again bring back my Axemen of the Girdle. I don't want them to get caught. But now Fëanor is actually going to commit to a fight, which was a refreshing change of pace for this battle, as he did a lot of running away. So my Axemen of the Girdle here, fighting hard against the Acedian Ents. I'm going to bring in some of my Spear Host, and they're going to tie down these Scouts of Gillian. So we got some Mythern and Tolgalen. We've got all of his units trying to maneuver themselves together into a big old death ball, and I can certainly see that going on. So I've got my Marksmen of Region moving forward, and I'm going to start to mobilize my infantry reserves, my significant infantry reserves. So I've got my Axe Guard here, all my Axe Guard, and they're going to begin to beat feet and get over here as quickly as possible. So we're starting to beat our way through the Scouts of Gelion here, and then he's going to come forward in force with everything he's got. And this is really my cue to be moving forward. And I probably should have been doing this a little bit earlier, but I was also otherwise engaged here, playing around with the Outriders of Dwylwyn. Trying to keep them out of my back lines, because I know that he wanted to kind of simultaneously attack me on multiple fronts here. So I have some troops here out in front. They're doing all right, but he's very, very blobbed up as well, and that's something that I will certainly be able to use to my advantage when it comes to an infantry fight. So you see the Doriath and Mablung, my Axe Guard units, all in position. These guys being peppered down now by some of my Axemen of the Girdle who managed to escape from that fight. Doriath and Mablung here, going for a charge against the Outriders of Dwylwyn, who have now been engaged, going after some of my marksmen, just trying to delay me from getting into the fight, but now my significant units have managed to make their way to the fray, and we'll be able to move to surround this big old blob of Acedian heavy infantry. Now over here we have Randirim, and they're laying down quite a lot of very devastating fire into my Axemen of the Girdle, which is why they're taking such horrendous losses right now. Also have some issues with the Acedian Ents, but they're currently fighting against Spearhost and just trying to avoid my Doriath and Mablung. Urfin and Tower moving forward, and so I've moved forward with some of my Rangers of the Girdle. And the intent with this maneuver is to deny them that charge, because we're going to follow that up with an attack from our Axe Guard as well. The Doriath and Mablung are in here. Marksmen of Region weathering the storm from these Outriders of Dwylwyn, and in the meantime, they're actually being pelted by some of my Spearhost of the Girdle, and I should be able to hopefully get in there and shut down those Acedian Rangers, because that's a really big problem for me. And now, my troops are in here. We've managed to deny the Urfin and Tower their most important statistic, that being their charge value, and so we'll start to be able to pull that back over time. Finrod's going to be running his Ents around everywhere that he can, and currently the Ents are a little bit broken, and so this will be something that changes for previous patches, or for subsequent patches, because they're way too fast, and the amount of damage that they do in an area is a little bit too much. But it is something that we're working on, and again, it's a work in progress. This is still our closed alpha, so hopefully this will be something that we can get a little bit more reasonable for subsequent patches. Outriders of Dwylwyn here, managed to get behind my lines. I only have so much that I can really do about this at this point. They did kind of manage to slip by some Spearhosts, so I should have been using like my Rangers and other things to try and keep on top of these guys if I could. Sentries of Gelion here, charging into my Axemen of the Girdle, but my Axemen are barely going to feel that, especially from the front. We're going to see this here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to turn them around in time, but they will countercharge at the last moment there. And it will be enough to kill off at least some of those Outriders of Dwylwyn. And so they are slowly bringing things back here a little bit, but over on this end, I've actually managed to get my Doriath and Mablung behind their lines, and we're pursuing their general as well. And now he just lost his, or pursuing their Rangers rather, not their general, but he lost his general. We're so close to just being able to rout off those Randirim, but they're a good deal faster than we are. And unfortunately, we're going to have to turn around to try and win this fight, because the demands of the battle are such. Still got some Axemen here firing away. More and more of my troops are now cycling into the fray. But he's used his Ents really well. Although, to be fair, the Ents are kind of a broken tool in this patch. But we are managing to win the infantry fight, and that is significant for sure. So my full company of Wardens of the Girdle getting off their charge bonus. Rangers of the Girdle still present. Still firing away at those Outriders of Dwylwyn, trying to deal some significant damage to them. Spearhosts are nearby. They might manage to get off a quick shot here. Yeah, some of those Javelins will find their mark. And more of those Outriders of Dwylwyn are going to fall as a result. And the pressure here is going to continue. The Acedian infantry has largely been wiped out. We're victorious over here. The Urfin and Tower have been destroyed. I still have a lot of Spearhost. There are still some Scouts of Gelion. That's something that I'm going to need to deal with. And I think my Doriath and Mablung are in decent shape. So they're continuously chasing away the Rangers. And we actually managed to push the Rangers there quite far out of position. So now we're going to go for a nice rear charge here against the remaining infantry. And that's where we're going to try and win this match. Now my Axeman here, gonna go for another big charge. I guess the Outriders would wheel win, but these Ents are just proving to be a real wrecking ball for my troops now. I am managing to get some of the counters for them in there, but this is where the speed of them does kind of play a significant role, as they're able to just disengage from fights that they don't like. Doriath and Blung there, gonna basically wipe out that entire unit. And we've managed to win the infantry fight for the most part. Now the Rangers are coming back, and that's something to be worried about, but I do have some light infantry that I can kind of break off here. And you are going to see that. So some of these Wardens of the Girdle are going to go and try and take a bite out of those Rendirum, and they're definitely going to be shooting into this blob here for sure. And now we're just going to fast forward it through here, because we've won the infantry fight, but this is a little bit unfortunate to see. So basically, Finrod is going to kite for about 10 minutes with the single Ranger unit, and kind of exploit the Ents here for all they're worth. So we're just going to fast forward through it, because it's not super interesting. Yeah, and he's just going to run away from all fights that he doesn't like, and try and just plink away with the Rendirum. Which, if I'm being honest, I was not a big fan of it. We managed to rout off some of the Scouts of Gelion there. So it's a 4-fun tournament, and this is a little bit cancerous, but I suppose it is like that. When you want to win, I suppose if you're willing to do whatever it takes in order to win, even if it isn't a friendly tournament, then this is the kind of stuff you are going to do. And unfortunately, my Doriath and Blung are just not able to get in there. We haven't actually been able to kill off any of those Ents so far, which is very unfortunate. Yeah, and we're slowly but surely going to get picked apart by the Rangers there. And he's just going to continue to just run away. I think we managed to kill off... No, we killed off like a rider or something, so nothing significant. So this was a fight we were winning. And it was a really, really good game. Up until this point, this was honestly pretty cancerous and not something I expected to see in a 4-fun tournament. But, you know, it's like that sometimes. So, let's go through the casualties here. Managed to do alright. My marksman actually managed to get a good deal of kills there. Rangers of the Girdle didn't get too many kills, but they were able to put pressure into like the Earthen and into the cavalry, which was important. Doriath and Blung were kind of denied a lot of kills there, and that was just skillful maneuvering on the part of Finrod. Yeah, it's just a shame that it kind of came down to this like most cancerous possible combination at the end, but oh well. So that is one of the first rounds. So I was unfortunately eliminated, and Finrod is going to move on. Let us move on to some of our other first round games. Now, this, I believe, is going to be Titus versus the Easterlings. So we're going to have Nargothrond, or the House of Fëanor. And they're going to be playing against the Easterlings of both the tribes of Bor and Ulfang. And again, they are on the Nargothrond map. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of his comp here before we jump into it. So Titus has brought some archers of Talathirnin. Looks like about 3 companies of them. No, 2 companies, and he's also got 2 units of the marksmen of Nargothrond as well, who are a split-shot archer. Defenders of Talathirnin, bridge wardens of Nargothrond forming up the center, some more defenders of Talathirnin. Got some wardens here as well. These are armor-piercing spears, as that is something that the House of Fëanor does specialize very heavily in. In the back, we have the Scouts of Tawad and Falroth. They're a little bit more of a melee-oriented kind of archer. They're lower on their ammunition count, but they do have 2-handed spears, and that's going to increase their melee defense and also give them a significant bonus against cavalry, so they can be used in some pretty creative ways. Arqueni Mormagilwa, an important thing to have when you are fighting elephants, for example, as they specialize in fighting them much more so than other 2-handed units. But they're also a really, really strong infantryman, as they are relentless. Some more Scouts of Tawad and Falroth right there. Front line is going to consist of swordsmen of Talathirnin. Looks like we got 3 companies of them. Some defenders of Talathirnin joining them on the front line. Some wardens of Nargothrond in behind them. And then the archers of Talathirnin out front. Hello there, Zaffi. Thank you for joining us. Now is an opportunity for me to catch up on chat just a little bit. Which is the best faction to play in siege or on defense? Probably Nargothrond. Yeah, I would say so. The dwarves eventually will be very, very strong on the defense. I would wager that Gondolin could also be very good on the defense, based on kind of what I have done for them conceptually so far. I could see the Easterlings being pretty good on the defense as well. Just because those halberds, they have by far the best halberds in the game in terms of, like, just raw statistics. Oh, let's go ahead and fast forward here and get through this as quickly as we can. Yeah, scouts out on the edge, and it looks like he's got this little double line formation thing going on. He's going to be expecting his enemy to come to him for sure. So it looks like Titus might be playing it a little bit safe. Certainly seems to be the case with this formation and the fact that he opted for Fëanor. Oops. Let's take a look at what his opponent is up to. So his opponent is going to be the Steward of Dale, playing as the Easterlings. He's got Salamandrine Guard here. Salamandrine Guard are particularly impressive in a few regards. One, they can upgrade their armor to give them, I think it brings them up to about 10 or so armor, so they can be very tanky. They're also armor-piercing in close quarters. They have a special projectile that damages the morale of their opponents, and they have a bonus against monsters. Their big drawbacks, however, are their cost, and the fact that there's only 40 of them in a unit. These are not 2 HP cavalry, these are 1 HP cavalrymen, so they will take attrition very, very quickly when under sustained fire. Got some Warband of Lothline here in the front lines, a basic unit for the Easterlings. In behind, Ravagers of Himring. Now, an important thing to note about the Ravagers is that they are anti-cavalry, as the House of Wolfang does not have spearmen. And these guys are definitely from that sub-faction. But they are locked morale, and they have minor bonuses against cavalry, in addition to huge charge bonuses, as they are Falksmen. And the same applies to the Pillagers here, except that they are not locked morale, but instead they cause fear. And behind them, we have some Marauders of Himring. These are Axe Throwers. Very, very good against unshielded units, even if they're relatively well armored, as they do have a base projectile damage of 9. And especially against light infantry, these guys can shred them very, very fast. Over here, I have some more Pillagers of Himring. Again, fear-causing, higher tier, just generally better stats all around than the Ravagers. But they are not locked morale, so that's something you have to be concerned about. Got some more Marauders of Himring here, and a third company of Marauders in addition. Ravagers of Himring, already talked about them. Some more Band of Lothland, Salamandrine Guard. And his front line is going to consist of Chieftain's Honor Guard, very scary units. I got some Clan Guard of Lothline here. These are Scimitar Infantry. They have pretty good damage at about 8, but it's their melee defense stat that you're going to be very, very impressed with. These guys are just not an easy unit to get rid of, and the same applies to the Halberdiers of Lothline. Again, when it comes to just raw damage and melee defense stats, these are some of the best halberds in the game. In fact, currently I think they're the only halberd in the game, so that list of competition is not very long. But in terms of just being pole arms, these guys are really, really good and solid. Second company of them there. Got some more Clan Guard of Lothland in addition to. And let's say a quick note here on the Chieftain's Honor Guard. They are extremely tanky. They do really good damage, and they have a 3 morale in 50 meter buff that is going to help keep your units in the fight for a long time. Salamandrine Guard here. Trading shots with the Scouts of Tauda and Falroth. They have taken some minor attrition here. Hopefully they have their armor upgrades if he intends to weather this storm coming his way. A decent amount of damage coming into them. One second here. Safi knows very well that I'm streaming, so I'm just going to quickly make myself offline. There we go. These guys moving forward, going for a cheeky little rear charge here. They're not going to want to stick around if they can, because they will die off very, very quickly in response to those two-handed spears. Now, relatively painless. Only about 3 or so of them died there, so good micro on the part of Steward of Dale. A little hit-and-run attack there, while the rest of his forces begin to move in. So what he's going to do is trying to attack one specific section of the House of Fëanorfin's line. And with the overwhelming numbers and with that debuff coming in from the fire arrows, he might just succeed in cracking this heavy line. You can see there's not really a ton here that's moving towards the front line. And the things that are missile units and some locked morale troops as well. So the marksmen of Nargothrond on this end, spraying their fire into these poor halberdiers of Lothland. And this is pretty scary for him, so a lot of missile damage, and it's a little bit of passivity here on the part of Titus, which is unfortunate to see. But this is something that you do tend to notice with newer players. They'll often turtle up with factions like Fëanor or the Fëanor, and then just stay in one spot and try to weather the storm. But, you know, that's how it be when you're getting used to the mechanics. Oh, unfortunately, the poor Marauders of Himring here getting attacked. So Titus is now breaking off from the rest of his formation and sallying forward to attack one of the weaker parts of Stewart of Dale's line. He's going to succeed in routing it nearly immediately. And this was, I think, perhaps a big miscalculation on the part of Stewart of Dale. But to be fair, given how passive Titus was being up until this point, this is a mistake that I certainly would have made myself. But yeah, a micro lapse there is going to cost him a lot of really important units. Meanwhile, over here, the Easterlings are winning through sheer quality. And they are smashing their way through this section of the Fëanor line. So basically they're going to trade positions in a lot of ways. It's just unfortunate that Stewart of Dale also committed to the other side. I think trying to attack both wings at once and then leaving these troops in the center without support is probably the biggest mistake that Stewart of Dale has made so far. He's spread himself really, really thin, whereas if he was concentrated with all those extra units over here, he would be able to quickly smash through these guys, and it would just be no problem for him. He is going to be able to shut down a lot of the skirmish line, but his troops over here are not going to hold on long enough for him to do any significant damage, and now he's going to be in danger of finding himself surrounded. So these Fëanor troops are managing to hold relatively well. Marks of Nargothrond now being committed to melee. He still has his cavalry, which could be very, very significant indeed, but he's going to need to be able to turn around here a little bit. I think he recognizes that, so we've got some halberdiers lining up, but yeah, this is looking pretty ugly. Still relatively close, though, with a 5% difference. Salamandrine Guard and the Ravagers of Himring over here, they are at least going to hold up a very significant amount of Fëanor troops for quite some time. While Stewart of Dale picks away at them with the Salamandrine Guard, but I think he might be better off trying to annihilate this group of Fëanor soldiers over here. And these marksmen are getting overwhelmed. The Stewart of Dale is just going to push right through with sheer mass and try and gobble up this other section of the Fëanor line, trying desperately to defeat Titus's forces in detail. Archers of Talathirin here getting another big charge from Salamandrine Guard, who look like they're out of ammunition, and they're actually going to be attacked from two sides all at once. This could be enough to rout off these Archers of Talathirin, and they're not going to be able to stand very long. So this is actually kind of playing out nicely for Stewart of Dale. Does have some of his Ravagers over here, and again, as I mentioned, they are locked morale, so they're going to have to kill every single one of them in order to be rid of these units. What we got here? Marksmen of Nargothrond. Look like they're trying to get their bows out. I would assume that they're going to turn around and fire. That would make the most sense. Yeah, they're going to go after the Salamandrine Guard. That's going to hurt. Ooh, those poor Salamandrines. Going to want to get them out of there as quickly as possible. A nice surround here from Stewart of Dale. Chieftain's Honor Guard wrecking what remains of the pikemen of Nargothrond. And that's a big loss for Fëanor. A lot of their genuinely powerhouse units that can get a ton of kills in the right circumstances are their spear units, and the pikemen are a big part of that. So if this continues, I don't know how Titus will be able to recover from these kinds of losses, because what he's got over here is not enough. He does have some pikemen, and that is important. As I mentioned, the pikemen are very, very strong. He's got a little bit of marksmen, but in terms of just sheer numbers here, the Easterlings do have the advantage, and there's a lot of like mid-tier spearmen and stuff on this end as well. So it's a reasonably close battle, although Titus is ahead by about 8% at this point. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up just a little bit in the interest of time. He's doing his best here with this full surround. It says the victory is certain, but honestly these units will expire if this is allowed to continue. Some swordsmen here from Titus have made it in from the other side. Now Stewart of Dale's going to have to break things off, and he's in trouble. This is, I think, where Stewart of Dale's army is going to begin to fall apart. Enfilading fire from the Nargothrond marksmen is a lot to deal with. And now that the pikes have begun to move forward, like these clan guard pretty well slaughtered. Well, they would have slaughtered anyway, the swordsmen of Talathirna. They managed to take a bite out of them. But with the arrival of the pikes now relieving these beleaguered forces here, I think this is going to spell defeat for our poor Stewart of Dale. What are these guys doing here? Looks like there's some of the remaining infantry managed to get in there and silence the marksmen, but it's far too late. They managed to get off a couple of volleys there. And so I think Titus is going to take this and move on to the next round. I'll go ahead and kick it up to 6 times speed here, as this is just an infantry grind. But slowly but surely going to see the end of Stewart of Dale's army. So it's 94, it's going to be about 100% to maybe 84, 85 at most. So not a super close game, but still not too bad. And there goes the boar general, and now the bodyguard is going to lose heart, and they will begin to flee. Well, that's basically it for Stewart of Dale in this tournament. So it looks like Titus will be moving on. Take a look at the difference there. Stewart of Dale managed to take a good bite out of that Fëanor army, but unfortunately was just not able to destroy the very resilient Fëanor blobs in detail before Titus was able to finish off with the other side. Arquanian Mormon Gilwa ended up getting a ton of kills there. Swordsmen doing well, probably killing off a lot of the lower melee defense Wolfang units who do specialize in having like higher numbers, so it does pad the kill count somewhat. And there you go. All right, so let's move on to our third round of round 1, or third game, I should say. I believe that's this one right here. So this is going to be Demetrius Stratus. He's going to be playing as the House of Fingolfin. And they got a few changes in this particular patch. They will be getting some more in the future with the addition of a legendary company. And we'll also be getting a detachment for their two-handed swordsmen, along sort of similar lines to the Armitar of Beredithel. These guys will be a two-handed version of them. So they will have a little bit more flexibility there with how they build their compositions. But in any case, he's brought Sentries of Hithlum. Got a front line here of 3 of them. These are the Edain of House Hador. A little bit more well integrated into the Elven army, hence the kind of more elegant armors and things like that they are sporting. Pardon me. Have some Marines of Newmar here as well. Armor-piercing skirmishers. Got some Bladesmen of Beredithel, and they're probably going to get paired alongside the Sentries of Hithlum, I would expect. Marksmen of Beredithel, in addition to. Got about 2 units of them. Sons of Hurin. I think this is probably one of the favorite units for people basically across the entire mod. The bodyguardsmen are extremely potent, and you can actually see Hurin himself wearing the dragon helm of Dorloman. That's a fantastic model there made by Skyly. Just want to draw a little bit of attention to that. Some herdsmen of Hithlum here as well. These guys are melee focused archers, so they have about 5 ammunition. They've got quite low melee defense, but they are two-handed axes, and one of the few sources of melee armor piercing for the House of Fëanor, the other one being the Sons of Hurin. Some Aidimo Arantar here as well. And this is where the general is going to be hanging out. So you can see the model there for High King Fingolfin. That was actually made by Sin of the Dark Cloud and is a fantastic addition to the bodyguard here, which was made by Castellan of Angmar. So a big, big thank you to them for all their hard work. More herdsmen over on this end. Got some Ferdsmen of Dorloman. These are low-tier spearmen. They're mostly just there to get in the way and to provide an anti-cavalry screen for House Fingolfin, who are pretty limited in terms of their cavalry. But speaking of, some lancers here of Anonin Galuth. These are light lancers, high tier, but they do tend to melt under sustained arrow fire. So you need to take care of them. Looks like we only got about one company of them here today. So let's go ahead and take a look at the opposing army. And this is going to be Celtic. He's going to be playing as Acedian, and he's got some Kinsmen of Denethor. I think this is very similar to the army that we face. So we've got some Ents here as well. Urfin and Tower, got a detachment of them, so it's a little bit different. And then 2 full companies of Urfin and Tower. And the rest of the army is pretty well hidden. So I think what you're going to see here are Scouts of Gelion. You're going to see Huntsmen of... Rathlorial Huntsmen. Just one second. Sorry about that, I had to clear my throat. You're going to see some Huntsmen of Rathloriel, which are skirmishers, armor-piercing javelin men. And you'll probably see some skirmishers of Rathloriel as well. They operate a little bit differently in this patch, as the detachments of the skirmishers are armed with poison arrows, but the regular skirmish arrows do not have poison arrows, but they do have a nice little speed bonus, in addition to their higher numbers and such. Sentries of Gelion, moving over onto the wing here, probably to try and push the Fingolfin player to face them and waste time skirmishing with them, or to make them go forward so that they kind of move into this big ugly trap. And now leading with the Sentries of Hithlum could potentially be a problem for the House of Fingolfin here, as these Edain pikemen don't have the greatest armor value. They've got about 7 to the base 6 damage of all Acedian archers, so it's not going to match up very well in terms of the probabilities. So these guys are extremely vulnerable, especially without a shield. And House of Fingolfin is going to have to push here. Now you're going to start to see more and more of these units begin to reveal themselves. Scouts of Gelion on the front line, 1 unit of them here, 2nd unit of them here, and I'm expecting that we're going to see some Rangers on the field as well. Celtic is very much going to play a kiting army, and you could probably tell by the frames there that this is going to take some time. Another company of Scouts of Gelion over here on the wings, nearby to the Sentries of Gelion. That's actually really good positioning for them, as they will be able to cover the retreat of the Sentries of Gelion. Looks like the Ferdsmen here getting shot in the back. The Herdsmen as well, and a lot of these skirmish units here are kind of blobbed up a little bit on the part of Demetrius Stratus, so they're going to be easy prey for those very accurate, very deadly Acedian archers. But nonetheless, he will persist, and he will move forward here. And some of these scouts are going to get a little bit close to the fire. Now, Acedian archers like this are quite fast. They're a little bit faster than heavy infantry for sure. So they are able to sort of stay out of reach indefinitely, but I don't think they're quite fast enough that you want to let them get this close. Now, Celtic is going to have to pull back here, and his retreat is going to be covered by another section of his army, Urfin and Tower. So a really nice layered approach here to this kind of kiting skirmish army. Looks like we have some Lancers of Anonin Galud who got a little bit too close to the sun here. Some of the armor-piercing javelins opening fire on the Ents, managing to do some damage to them. You can see some of those Ents starting to get a little bit bloody. Skirmishers of Rathloriel here in the form of a detachment, beginning to wind up here, but looks like the momentum of Demetrius Stratus is paying off a little bit. So we got some Hunters of Rathloriel in the back here. Again, I figured we'd see them. And then a big volley there into the Bladesmen. It's going to hurt. And many of them are going to fall in response. And now the Marksmen of Barid Ithal are in a position where they can start to lay down some fire of their own. And they're probably going to shoot at the Urfin and Tower. Indeed they are. That's the target that I would go for, certainly. And some minor damage there being inflicted upon the Urfin and Tower. Outriders of Dweilwyn have now revealed themselves, and they probably went for a cheeky charge over here. But the Herdsmen and the Ferdsmen would have managed to ward them off. Marines of Vinyamar here under some really heavy fire. And things are looking pretty grim for the Fingolfin army. They definitely need to get moving again. All they've done now is just move into an encirclement here with their initial momentum forward. So you got to keep that up and just keep pushing. Demetrius Stratus here, relocating some of his archers and firing into, I'm not too sure who. Looks like maybe they took a bite out of the sentries of Galleon, but Celtic is going to manage to definitely move them out of position. And now that is just time wasted for Demetrius Stratus. He needs to move forward here. Let's go ahead, continue to run this on 6 times. And there we go. There's the advance again. So we have a little bit of time here, so I can check the chat. I haven't been able to do that too much. Huron couldn't wear the dragon helm because he was a smaller stature than his forefathers. Yeah, we know he never wore it, but it's cool and it's iconic, so that's why it's in the unit. So he's continuing to push forward here. The sentries of Hithlum are taking a lot of damage. They're down from about 160 in the unit. And this one is nearly at about, yeah, far less than half right there. So things are looking pretty grim for the House of Fingolfin. And there's a lot of dead Noldor all over the field here. So far, Celtic's cutting strategy has worked out famously for him. We got 34% to 7%. This is looking like it's going to be a big, ugly blowout in favor of the Green Elves. Our Riders of Dwylwyn nearby, taking some point-blank shots here, but managing to get off a good charge into the Marksmen of Barad Ithel. That's going to hurt, but they are going to continuously get shot, and now they're going to go after some of the Bladesmen of Barad Ithel here, and I don't think it's going to work out real well for them as they do end up routing off, trying to push through this unit. So that's a small win there for the House of Fingolfin. At least they don't have to worry about those Lancers any longer. Our Riders of Dwylwyn here, going for a very cheeky charge. Some of them do get caught on the pikemen, but the majority of them will make it into the Marksmen of, or rather the Bladesmen of Barad Ithel. And in return for their trouble, they're going to take a couple of javelin volleys there from the supporting Marines of Vinyamar. They will escape with some losses. Now they're down to less than half strength. Sons of Hurin. Ooh, flying very close to the sun indeed. Oh no, the Hunters of Rathloriel, this is exactly the kind of thing that they are going to love. But he will manage to pull them back at just the right moment. And only one or so of those volleys one or so of those javelins is actually going to end up going down range. But he will be getting shot from the rear here, which is unfortunate. The Scouts of Galleon have sensed blood in the water. And now, these Scouts here, they do manage to kind of rear charge against the Marksmen, but honestly, the Marksmen are quite able swordsmen. They've got good melee defense, and they're going to smash up those sentries. And these guys actually get caught on here for way too long. I don't think Celtic meant for them to stay in there for quite so long as they did, and they are going to maybe manage to get away, but oh, they are going to break at the last second. And now Celtic is beginning to lose more and more of his cavalry presence. So a charge here into the Herdsmen of Hithlum will actually hurt, as their melee defense is quite low, given their axes. But you don't want to leave them in there for too long. So you can see the casualties already beginning to mount. Adimo Arantar and these archers here, facing their direction. This is more of a desperation play, I think, on the part of Celtic, as he wouldn't have been able to get them away. Not from the Marksmen of Barad Ithel, not in such low numbers. This unit is basically out of the fight. They're not going to rout. But he's going to go for just a little bit more value, just trying to squeeze some extra damage out of this cavalry unit. They're actually going to get countercharged there by the Herdsmen of Hithlum, sort of as their last gasp against the Green Elves. And that whole unit is going to die in a matter of seconds. And I think the remainder will start to rout or be killed off in short order. Meanwhile, the main body of his army has pushed forward. And I think Celtic is starting to run out of ammunition, which means he's starting to run out of options. So Scouts of Galleon probably still have some shots to fire, but it looks like the Urfinen Tower are out of ammunition. The Hunters of Rathloriel probably don't have too much left. No, it looks like they're all out. Kinsmen here have been pushed to the brink. The Skirmishers are out. So I think now, if you look at that, things are certainly in Celtic's favor. But let's see, because without their ammunition, there's not a ton that they can do against this really fine heavy infantry. Especially a lot of these Bladesmen are still in decent shape, and there's a lot of pikes left. There's more pikes left than I would have expected, and that's to say nothing of the 2 bodyguards who remain. Celtic's cavalry is gone, his missiles are gone. despite this percentage difference, I don't know if the Green Elves have what it takes to take this fight if it comes down to a melee slog. That is not where the Green Elves do well. Even in the game that we saw earlier between myself and Finrod, the Green Elves did have an advantage in terms of like positioning and speed and things like that. But when it came down to an infantry fight, it was still a very, very close game. The only thing that kind of saved his army at the end was a little bit of cheese with the Ents and the Rangers. So we've seen sort of the limitations of the Green Elf army in terms of their prowess in close quarters. They're good at holding, and they've got some really strong units like the Urfin and Tower, but they've taken a little bit of damage. I don't know. He has a lot of Urfin and Tower. It might be enough to see him through this, but I think we'll see. I don't think that these marksmen are out of ammunition. So now it's going to be the Green Elf's turn to kind of come forward or be shot to death. Let's see if Demetrius Stratus manages to take advantage of that. I certainly would if I was him. I'd be taking lots and lots of shots at those archers, or at the Urfin and Tower. Well, it's interesting. Gelion came back. The Ferdsmen are here. I'm going to tell them exactly where to go. Backed up by the Adimo Adantar. Well, Marksman Baird Eichel now out of ammunition. These guys, though, let's see what they go after. Oh, they're going to go after the Urfin and Tower for sure. Now, these pikemen. Ooh, nice last-minute shots there. The pikemen, I think, are not going to be able to hold the line. Normally, pikemen against shock infantry like this, it can be pretty hard when the pike line is supported. But here, I don't think that that is the case. I think that Demetrius Stratus left his pikemen unsupported, and the Urfin and Tower is certainly going to take advantage of that. But there is some help coming in. Bladesman of Baird Eichel. And as we saw earlier, when these guys are denied a charge, they don't do too well in melee thanks to their low melee defense. Over here, nice attack from the Bladesman of Baird Eichel, supported by the Adimo Adantar and some Ferdsmen of Dorloman. They've managed to catch these scouts of Gelion, and they've basically separated them from the army. And now, the limited capacity for the Green Elves to fight in melee, I think is going to become significant. So if we look at that there, that is a big jump. That's 10% in very short order. Skirmishers and kinsmen being thrown in. But the Sons of Húrin have been brought forth. I think they're probably going to bypass this engagement and go for the Ents. That's certainly what I would do. And it looks like that is going to indeed be the case. Marksman of Baird Eichel continuing to fire into these Outriders of Dweilwyn, and they have been reduced down to next to nothing at this point. Celtic desperately trying to swing things in favor in melee, but there goes the Green Elf General. Now the Urfin and Tower are being beaten back by a combination of Bladesmen and Sentries. Marksman Baird Eichel have moved in to press these Urfin from behind. That's going to keep them in place for a little while. First of Dorloman managing to get behind the lines. They're going to be attacked by Hunters of Rathloriel. There's some Ents there as well, but I think the Ents are starting to die off now. Yeah, there they go. The rest of the Outriders of Dweilwyn being brought forward, crashing into the Marksman Baird Eichel, and that's going to swing things in Celtic's favor, for the moment at least. These Outriders of Dweilwyn need to be dealt with in some capacity. In the center here, the Sons of Húrin have managed to break through. The Ferdsmen of Dorloman are holding back the Green Elves just long enough for the valiant men of the Edain, the personal bodyguard of their chieftain Húrin himself, to break their way through and crash into the rear of the Hunters of Rathloriel. And the Sons of Húrin do cause fear and their locked morale. So they're going to fight here pretty well to the death, and I think the Hunters of Rathloriel being attacked from behind, in addition to that fear trait, this could be a route for them, and that's going to free up some extra space for Demetrius to destroy the rest of Celtic's army. And the Ents here starting to run out of steam as well. A few of them being attacked. Ooh, another one of those trees being felled by the mighty axes of the men of Dorloman. And now I think that's the last. There's only 2 or so Ents left on the battlefield, and they are very dangerously close to the Sons of Húrin. They're going to pull out of there quickly. But looks like elsewhere, well, the Green Elves have managed to come out of this scrap relatively intact with about 50 or so of those guys still remaining. Ooh, the Randirim now playing their part. But these scouts are being pressed hard. And there's the Adimo Adantar in there as well to keep things stable. So even as these casualties begin to mount, These guys aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. But Demetrius definitely needs to capitalize on an opportunity here, maybe try and push into the Randirum, or just try to weather it. Some of this is going on to the shield value, and it's not... well, losing 5 or so men to a Ranger volley is not too bad, so he's just trusting in the strength of his heavy infantry there, and their armor and their shields, to see him through that fight. Sons of Húrin are over here, and they've smashed what remains of the Green Elves in the center. The First Men of Dor Loman are actually starting to pull things back here against the Hunters of Rathloriel. The Hunters of Rathloriel are not line spearmen as such. They do use a different template than infantry, as they are predominantly skirmishers. So, yeah, the Firdsmen, on the other hand, are light spearmen. They've got a lot of melee defense. They will be able to hold these guys up for a long time, if not outright beat them in this kind of situation. Look in the back here. Marines of Vinyamar being pulled out. The Kismet of Denethor are being overwhelmed. And the Marksmen still holding their ground. And the Scouts of Gelion being attacked from behind by the Marines of Vinyamar. And while the Marines of Vinyamar are skirmishers, and the Scouts of Gelion do have really good melee defense, getting attacked from in the rear isn't something anybody likes. And with the Green Elf General dead, these guys could rout off in fairly short order. So we look at the percentages there. That is incredible. This is a total upset. Blazeman of Barret Ithel taking a charge from the front. Only one of them manages to fall, as they are quite high on their melee defense. This is the House of Fingolfin specialty, and so their swordsmen are very, very sticky. And when it comes to getting into melee slogs, that is where they are absolutely at home. And that's going to be the end for the Outriders of Dwylwyn. The Ents have all died. These hunters are routing off, and I think this is going to be the end of Celtic's army. You can see that finally, for the first time in this game, Demetrius has managed to pull ahead of the commanding lead that the Green Elves had earlier on. And damn, look at that. The Randirum and Tolgolan out of ammunition. The Bladesmen managed to weather that storm, and with the aid of the Arimo Arantar, they are going to pull through and take this fight. So that's a crazy upset. We were all very surprised to see this. So a fantastic game here played to Demetrius Stratus, and obviously Celtic knows what he's doing when it comes to the kiting armies. He was very, very dominant in the first half of this battle, but he just didn't have the skirmish to destroy the entirety of a House Fingolfin army. They've got a lot of shields. They've got a lot of numbers as well. That's something that they can do very, very, very well. Better than a lot of other Noldor factions, is they can bring numbers. And the numbers and the armor and the shield value all combined together to help them weather that storm. So a good choice here on the part of Demetrius Stratus. A really good game from both players. And that's going to come down to, well, obviously it's not that, there's not that much of a disparity. It was probably more like a 7 or 8% difference, I think. And Demetrius Stratus will be moving on to the next round. Let's take a brief break there. I'll take a look at chat just for a few moments. How can I participate? If you want to participate, Philippe, if you want to participate in the RP, then all you gotta do is join our Discord and tell us as much. And you tell us what faction you want to play for. I think the only faction that currently is full is the Sons of Fëanor. So you can pick any of the other 8 factions, and you'll be able to play them in the RP. Hello, Ralmec. Thanks for joining us. And there's just mostly discussion about whether or not you'd want to wear helmets or not. I think you'd want to wear a helmet in any case. There's almost no good reason not to wear a helmet when you go into battle. Let's load up our next game here. And I believe that is going to be On the Edge of Death. Let me just double check here. That sounds about right. So this is going to be another House of Fingolfin army, this time being played by Melkon. Let's take a look at his army. I think it's probably pretty similar. One of the things that the House of Fingolfin does kind of lack at the moment is diversity. But they have since gotten a detachment for their spearmen, and they will be getting a detachment for their two-handed swordsmen. And then, of course, there's the Legendary Company, which will be a mounted unit. So there will be some more diversity added to the Fingolfin faction. So hopefully we see some more variety amongst their builds. I've got the Marines of Vinyamar here from Melkon, 2 units of them. 1 unit of the Lancers of Anonian Galuth. Sentries, I think 3 units of sentries sounds about right. 2 herdsmen. Got some blade masters. These are 2-handed units, and unlike other 2-handed units, these bladesmen have a passive missile deflection bonus, especially from the front. Actually, only from the front. And that's just because they are the House of Fingolfin, and that's kind of one of their specialties. So you've got the 2 units there, blade masters of Barad Ithel. Got some Sons of Hurin in addition to. And I've actually got some 2 companies of the Armatar of Barad Ithel detachments. So a little bit different there from the previous army, but there are some staples that are very much the same. Legend of the Phalanx here, backed up by, I think, 3 companies of the Bladesmen of Barad Ithel. And across the field from him, I'm thinking that looks like the House of Fëanor, which is going to be really, really exciting, as there's a lot of new stuff coming to, in particular, the House of Fëanor in this patch, and then eventually in the public patch as well. They've got a lot of new armor upgrades, new models, new textures, new mounts, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's really exciting to be able to show them off today. But let's go ahead, fast forward just a little bit here. We want generals, good players, Tolin Gaudhoth. Yes, I know that Tolin Gaudhoth is certainly looking for some new people. I think it's 4 generals that you can have per faction in total. So I think they've only got 2 currently. But let's go ahead and slow things down here so we take a look at the Sons of Fëanor army, or rather the House of Fëanor. And they're going to be played today by Waffles from the Armata clan. He's brought some Rangers of Hellevorn. These are armor-piercing skirmishers. You can see 2 of them right here. Got some Footmen of Amoros in addition to. These guys have their full armor upgrade, so they can have 2 armor upgrades, bringing them to a grand total of 14 armor. They are lower on the melee defense with only about 8, so armor-piercing can be a serious danger to these guys. But when it comes to missiles and just slugging it out in melee against non-armor-piercing units, their armor bonus does make up for that in a very, very significant way. Got some Hunters of Caligorm here with that new red armor and their new mount borrowed from Botet. And they are heavy lancers, and they're the best heavy lancers in the game from any other faction. I don't think anyone else actually has heavy lancers, but I would go as far as to say they are the best non-2 HP lancer unit in the game. I got some more Footmen of Amoros there, some Shield Bearers of Hellevorn, Edain from the House of Beor, got Defenders of Aglon, the Legendary Company, the Accursed of Alcolonde. They also have an armor upgrade, but it doesn't entail a model change. But that brings them up to 15 armor, which is the, I think, highest score in the game currently. So if they are equipped with that, then that's going to help their tankiness quite a lot. But they are very low on their melee defense. They only have 10 as opposed to the 12 of the Defenders of Aglon. That is still quite low for a unit as elite as they are. So they are extremely vulnerable to armor piercing, to cavalry charges and things like that, so you want to try and keep them alive for as long as possible, because they are relentless. They cannot be stunned, so when you get them into close quarters, they are going to slaughter people. I routinely get like 150 kills on this kind of unit. It's very, very strong if used well. And there's the 2 Hunters of Caligorm there. I don't think I saw any knights. Oh, we've already got some early action here. The Footmen of Amoros taking a huge hit here from the Lancers of Anonian Galuth. And as I mentioned, they have very low melee defense. Let's go ahead and turn things up here. This is actually going to hurt them in a very significant way. So a lot of value off that charge that these Footmen of Amoros brought down from 120 to 85 men in the unit. That is nearly a third of their number there. So a very vicious downhill cavalry charge from the Lancers of Anonian Galuth. And the Sons of Fëanor are literally going to be fighting an uphill battle here as Melkon has managed to take the high ground here. That's pretty rough. He's raining down death and destruction upon these Rangers of Hellevorn. So a little bit of a disorganized advance here, but I think the intention from Waffles is to get around the wing. So here's some of the cavalry that we managed to skip over. Requiting Maglora with their brand new mount, again from Botet. And there's a mount company of Kurufin here as well, and they're taking shots at the Blade Masters. I would probably go after the sentries instead. as I think that they're a little bit of a bigger threat. Melkon is now going to pull back one of the overextended parts of his army. Going to bring back his left wing. Ooh, and some nasty stuff here. The cavalry from the Lancers of, or rather the Lancer unit of Antonin Galud, the cavalry of House Fingolfin, getting another vicious charge there. And I think Waffles is kind of finding himself a bit overwhelmed. Looks like there was 2 companies of them. One was routed off, probably by the Roquini Magloro and a little bit of support, but a second company have managed to skirt behind the House of Fëanor lines, and they're being hunted by the mounted company of Curufin. These are actual proper melee cavalry. They've also got an armor upgrade. They will be getting a new model to reflect that as well. So they're extremely tanky, and against Lancers, they would slaughter these guys, but unfortunately they were not in the right place at the right time, and a lot of these important units for dealing with the phalanx of House Fingolfin have been wiped off the field. So we're looking at about a 7% difference here between the two sides, with some important units having already been swept from the field or severely crippled for the House of Fëanor. So things are looking pretty bleak, I think. Yeah, I believe I said that they had 14 armor when fully upgraded with their 8 skill. So it does put them on the lower end of the melee defense side of things, but that's kind of what the House of Fëanor does. They focus more on their armor than they do on their melee defense, whereas the House of Fingolfin is the opposite. They focus on their melee defense instead of their armor. So Waffles is trying to get an opportunity here, and I think there might be one for his Lancers if they want to go for a cheeky charge. They could probably get a piece of a lot of the heavy infantry here, maybe start to bring that percentage bar back in his favor. Well, looks like maybe they're going to go for it. They are getting very, very close. Oh, I see what they're doing. They're trying to get in behind so they can set up for a nice hammer and anvil. The Blade Masters are going to try and stop them, but the Footmen of Amaras are actually going to be blocking for the cavalry. But unfortunately, they're again out of position here, so Waffles is having a really, really tough time here in the infantry fight. And over on this side, yeah, the House of Fëanor have taken some pretty severe losses. Over on this side, there's not a whole lot left of the House of Fëanor army, but he's actually kind of separated here. So he split his army into 2 big old groups. I think the intention is to perhaps push the House of Fingolfin into a straight infantry fight here, and smash into them with his cavalry and smash into them with his remaining infantrymen. But we'll see how that ends up working out for him. Got some cavalry here. Oh, but they're being zoned out by those Sentries of Hithlum pikes. This could be a micro mistake that really does cost them. The only thing that's going to turn this fight around is the Sons of Fëanor cavalry, so he is going to get out of there. Whoa, thank God. I was really sweating there. So he's going to throw in the Footmen of Amaras, tie down as much of these units as possible. And the armor here from the Footmen of Amaras is really standing them in good stead. The Blade Masters Baird Ithel, even with the support of the Armitar Baird Ithel, are struggling to crack the heavily armored nut that is the House of Fëanor. Waffles has some more infantry nearby. He's maneuvering in with some of his forces here, so it seems like Waffles is well poised to regain the initiative in this battle. Roquini Magloro going for a nice big charge here. I don't think they managed to get their lances down, so it's not going to be worth it. Sons of Hurin are going to come in, and if they sink their teeth into the Roquini Magloro, oh, that's going to be devastating. That's a lot of killing power and a lot of budget. Oh, some javelins raining down as well. Roquini Magloro are in some serious, serious trouble. Waffles is going to get them out of there. He's going to lose nearly half the unit in the process. That's very difficult to watch. Over here, though, things seem to be going a little bit better. The Bladesmen of Baird Ithel have now moved in. They're actually a tier above the Footmen of Amaras. So they're starting to take that fight, especially with some help there from the Armitar. Blade Masters here are being driven back by the Footmen of Amaras. But the cavalry from the House of Fingolfin has just been zoned out very, very effectively so far, and they haven't really managed to do a whole lot with it. On company of Curufin over in this direction, looking like maybe they wanted to get in behind the Armitar here. They could have gone for a rear charge against these Bladesmen, but I don't think he wanted to risk it. Maybe he didn't want to get too close to those pikes there or something like that. All it would take, I think, is Melkon like pushing forward here to really put an end in the plans here of Waffles. These shield bearers and all these things like the Accursed and the Defenders are not going to do well against a pike wall from the front. So now would be a good time to maybe bully these guys out of position. I don't think that Waffles would necessarily take that fight unless he like really overextended. Got some more Bladesmen rushing down the hill here. And the House of Fëanor infantry, or cavalry rather, is still very static. They're actually taking a counter charge here from the Hunters of Caligorm. That is going to hurt. Oh, these Hunters of Caligorm down to about 7. Now, the Lancers can be devastating to the Herdsmen of Hithlum. As you can already see here, most of this unit has been destroyed, but on a counter charge, can't afford to lose those Hunters of Caligorm like that. Another nice charge here with the Lancers of Adon in Galuth. One of the things that Melkon has done really well so far is get value from his cavalry. He's been very vicious, very opportunistic with his charges, and that's exactly what you need to be here when you are outclassed so heavily by the House of Fëanor. Cavalry is their bread and butter, so you got to be very, very canny when it comes to using your own cavalry in response. And I think he's done that very well today. Now the House of Fëanor rather cavalry is in behind the lines. Ooh, these Marines of Vinyamar would get slaughtered in a charge from these Hunters of Caligorm. I don't know if I would have committed everything to this. I would have maybe gone with a smaller unit to tie these guys down a little bit, do some damage. They're facing the other way, and then use my larger unit to go for a charge against the Marines of Vinyamar, as they're only about 7 melee defense to like the nearly 25, 26 charge that the Hunters of Caligorm can have. They would have been absolutely devastating in that sort of situation, so that's probably what I would have done instead. Mounted Company of Kurufin now behind the lines. This is a good opportunity for them to deal with these Sentries of Hithlum here. They're going to hack their way through those Fëanor infantry. There goes the Fëanor general. Unfortunately for Waffles, his general just got himself cut down, and I'm not too sure where. Not too sure where at all. I think what I would maybe do is bring in the shield bearers, bring him like really close so that he has to kind of keep his forces in check there. I'd certainly use the Rangers of Hellevorn here to try and pepper down this Phalanx from the front, do a little bit of damage, but these units here need to be committed, especially in a flanking attack like this, getting in behind the Bladesmen of Barad Ithel. That's probably what I would go for if I was in Waffle's situation. They managed to get, I think that maybe they managed to get a nice little charge off there. Ooh, the Defenders of Aglon might, no, they're going to get their charge bonus off, so they will hack their way through the Herdsmen of Hithlum in very, very short order. We're actually in slow motion. You can see how quickly those casualties are beginning to mount. Now this cavalry here being zoned out again by Sentries of Hithlum. Melkon doing a great job here. He's going to double up on that flank with the second company of the Sentries. And now perhaps might be... No, now is not a good time. Yeah, these guys are just kind of keeping each other in place, essentially. But now that they're being committed to the fray, I think a possibility for an encirclement, maybe even bringing the Curse of Aquilonde through this gap here and beginning to put pressure on this side of the line, I think that would be an effective place for them to be deployed. Nice javelins here against the Sons of Húrin as they maneuver their way into the battle. This is exactly the kind of counter you want to use against a unit like the Sons of Húrin. You don't want to get close to them if you can help it. And now I think peppering them down and using the Accursed in this kind of situation, although maybe he needs them over here to kind of plug the gap in his line. Yeah, this is a tough one. 43 to 49, it's not totally in the favor of House Fingolfin, and a lot of their stuff has now been committed. And Waffles is a canny player. Oh no, 61 of the Footmen of Amoros running for the hills. But as I was saying, Waffles is a very canny player. If he can use his cavalry well, he might be able to turn this around. Still got a lot of Hunters of Caligorm, and I know that he's got some mounted company. They got a nice little rear charge here against these Bladesmen. The Bladesmen are kind of struggling against the Shieldbearers of Hellevorn. The Shieldbearers of Hellevorn can actually be quite tanky with their high melee defense, and they also have a minor armor upgrade as well. So they can go up from 6 to 8 armor, which is very, very good for a spear unit. Oh no, the Lancers of Adon in Galud now taking advantage of the absence of the Mounted Company of Kurufin, and I think Waffles has kind of realized the mistake he made by overextending here. Now these guys are actually going to pull out of that fight. I don't think I'd let them do that for too long. And of course, these Lancers are going to go for the rear of the Rangers of Hellevorn, and that's actually going to wipe that unit out for sure. Yeah, Waffles just being outmaneuvered by the speed of these light Lancers. But the cat is out of the bag now, so we can potentially use these guys in some rear charges against the Bladesmen of Barad Ithel, maybe try to smooth over that situation. In the center here, where the Defenders of Aglon are present, they are actually managing to cut their way through the Swordsmen of House Fingolfin. And there's a few places on the line where it looks like they're beginning to struggle. 56 to 63. It's not over yet, and actually the House of Fingolfin is starting to lose out here in terms of sheer numbers. The Accursed of Alcolonde have taken some losses. About 30% of the unit has been killed off. But nonetheless, they are trucking through these guys. They are very, very scary units. Quite expensive with some pronounced weaknesses, but nonetheless, in the right hands, they can be devastating. And now these spearmen I don't think are too long for this world. Hunters of Caligorm. Ooh, going after the Lance of Anon and Galud. Maybe they'll finally manage to rid themselves of this menace. But not today, Satan. These guys are going to be able to pull out of that fight. And what do we have here? The Mount Company of Cudofin. They want to give the House of Fingolfin the same treatment with the Sentries of Hithlum. Trying to get into position and to stop this from happening. Melkon's going to see it. He's going to turn around, try and mitigate that damage as best he can. When the Accursed now down to less than half strength. Oh no. Luckily, there's enough of a gap here that he will be able to retreat behind his own infantry. And that's going to put him squarely on the other side of his enemy. So now he's going to have to track all the way back around. This is a close one. This is a very, very tightly contested match. House of Fingolfin still behind, but they are managing to pull it back. I think the Sentries of Hithlum are going to be where they kind of live or die here. Wherever the house, or rather the Sons of Húrin are as well, they're, I think, going to be a linchpin in dealing with the House of Fëanor. Really important unit when you're facing against a heavily armored faction like this, and they are engaged in a winning fight right now. I know, Mounted Company here. I think, at this point, Waffles just wants to be done with these Lancers, but a better use of his time, given those Lancers out of position, might be to go after the rear of the Sons of Húrin, or against the Bladesmen, or something like that. That being said, he does have options there. He's got his Hunters of Caligorm, so actually I think that's the right play. Zone out the Lancers, while using his own Lancers. I think what he's going to want... Sons of Húrin. He's trying to set up a good charge here. Oh, if he commits to this, this is going to suck. Oh, no! Yeah, that counter charge there, it just wiped out those Hunters. Oh, it's devastating. He managed to take some of the Sons of Húrin down with him, but it just wasn't enough. Now they're going to double back against the Shield Bearers of Hellevorn. Still some options here in terms of cavalry for the House of Fëanor. Very, very closely fought game. Now the pikes are here, but they're in danger of being surrounded. The Sons of Húrin are just a menace, but there's enough defenders of Aglon left that they can tie them down. Those Hunters of Caligorm coming back for vengeance. These guys now breaking. They're going to want to go against the rear of the Sentries of Hithlum, so let's see what happens. Oh, now these Sentries are going to be able to move in and prevent these guys from being completely encircled. Meanwhile, oh, the Sons of Húrin taking a hit from behind. That's going to hurt. It's going to bring down more of them. But they will make the cavalry pay in return for that. These are not Lancers, so it's not going to do a ton by getting in from the rear. It does make a difference. Charge there. It looks like Melkon managed to turn around at the right time, and so he's going to be able to block some of that damage from the Hunters of Caligorm. There's about 12 of them left in total across 2 units. Shieldbearers of Hellevorn here, still doing reasonably well. Sons of Húrin being brought out. Going after those Lancers. This time the Lancers will get a little bit of satisfaction by getting their own charge in there, but they get stuck against the Sons of Húrin, who just have so much damage. Again, this is one of those units that you want to try and effectively deal with from range, rather than closing quarters with them. Let's see what's going on over here. So the Sentries have managed to sort of even things out a little bit. Defenders of Aglon, still 16 of them remaining, coming in from behind. Melkon very wisely pulling out his Sentries in response to that. But they're going to manage to actually get in there amongst a blob of Edain, and they're going to hack through them. Those swordsmen ain't no joke, and heavily upgraded as they are, they have very, very high armor values. And the pikes are comparatively lower. I think those Lancers have been destroyed at this point. Little cheeky charge here into these wavering shield bearers of Hellevorn should be enough to rout them off and free up some resources. Oh, a nice charge there from the remaining Lancers. Oh, it wasn't enough, though. It wasn't enough to turn that completely around. Oh, let's see if the Sons of Húrin get off a charge here against the Defenders of Aglon. Oh, that's going to hurt. That's going to be devastating for these guys. Might rout them off, and indeed it does. The fear and the fatigue all take hold. Ooh, a nice charge there by the Mounted Company into the Sons of Húrin, managing to whittle them down even further. They're going to pay for it with about half the unit. The Accursed, now in very serious trouble. They're going to take a charge from armor-piercing units, which, as I mentioned, is the last thing that they ever want to have happen to them. And even the massive morale values of the Accursed is not going to be enough to stand up to the Sons of Húrin. The sentries there are managing to basically destroy what's left of the Fingolfin cavalry. There's still some shield bearers. And Melkon is going to pull out his bladesmen. And they might be able to finish off what remains of that cavalry. This is looking like, I don't know, it's hard to say. The Accursed are still sticking around. The Sons of Húrin are in quite low numbers. But I think the pikemen here against the Edain, who are not really frontline fighters outside of the shield bearers of Halavorn, I don't think that they'll have what it takes when they're this tired and leaderless to stand and fight. Oh, another countercharge here from the Sons of Húrin, cutting through what remains of the Curse, and they're going to break. And then the Rangers of Halavorn are going to break as well. A very tightly fought game here between Demetrius Stratus and Waffles. Waffles was in a difficult spot, had some really bad luck early on, but you got to hand it to him. He really made this a very close game. And for a while there, it looked like it was always a tough fight for him, but there was a few instances where it was looking like maybe he was going to be able to pull through on this. And so that's all that remains of the House of Fingolfin here. Oh, some of these Rangers of Halavorn not quite done yet. I'm going to get a countercharge here from Sons of Húrin, Bladesmen of Barad-Ithel. I don't think that they'll stand and fight for too long. Valiant men of the House of Beor. The last men, the last anything for the House of Fëanor still left on the field. It's looking pretty brutal. And this should be the end of them. Very close game, 93-92. Both players played extremely well. Really good situational awareness. There was a few instances where if Melkon hadn't been on point with turning his units around, that might have proved catastrophic for him in the end. Yeah, gotta hand it to him. I've been playing with Melkon since like he was brand new to the mod, and he's come a really long way in a very short period of time. And Waffles is a veteran of Medieval 2, Reforged, you name it. Both very, very good players. Waffles has the experience edge, but I think Melkon managed to pull it out here through some really good plays. So that, I think, is going to be the end of our first round of this particular tournament. So I'm going to stop it there, because we've been going for a little while, and I do have some other obligations today, but I will be showing you the semifinals and the finals, which are a best of 3 matchup between, obviously, our 2 finalists, and you'll find out who those are tomorrow. But if you guys have any questions about the mod, about the new patch, about the RP in particular, by all means, I'm going to leave the chat open for an extra couple of minutes here, and then we can I'll be able to respond to those to the best of my ability, essentially. Hello, Alison. Let me just go through chat here and see if I've missed anything else. Would I choose the Axe Guard or the Sword Host for Doriath? I think that Colin has it right there. The Axe Guard are really good at grinding their way through chaff, grinding their way through spear units in particular, which is why I brought them in the Acedian matchup, and they have really high attack that you can upgrade for extremely cheap. So they're also very cost efficient. I would say that they, in certain cases, when it comes to fighting infantry, especially the infantry targets that I had in mind for them, they are more efficient than the sword host. The sword host have better melee defense, for example, so they're able to function as a center or like a front line for longer. So if I find myself as Doriath fighting against a lot of spear wall units, then I'm going to automatically go to my sword host, because they're just able to tar pit against those units better, and then I'm going to try and win the fight on the wings and then collapse in on that phalanx from the sides and from the rear. And the sword hosts are good at giving you the opportunity to do that. So it's kind of, it just depends on what you want to use them for. If it comes down to just pure killing power, the Axe Guard tend to win out, but they do have lower melee defense. So they get hit harder from charges, for example, of all description, cavalry, infantry, etc., etc. So you want to try and keep them out of a position where they're getting charged by shock infantry, which is why earlier on in that game when I was playing against Fëanor, I threw in my out-of-ammunition ranger unit first so they could block that charge, and then I threw them against the Urfinen Tower, who have lower melee defense but really high charge. So that's just kind of one of the thought processes that go into picking your units and, more importantly, picking their targets. But it doesn't look like anyone has too many questions. So I am going to go ahead and close down the stream for now. Hope you guys have enjoyed this so far, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow when we conclude the Flash tournament. All the games have already been played, so I know pretty well how they all end, but it's quite the upset. I think you guys are really going to enjoy the best of 3 series. It's very tightly contested, and it's a joy to watch. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.